Hello and welcome back to Because You're Fish. Thanks for joining me again today. I've got an awesome video about breeding panda cories, more specifically breeding panda cories in a community tank. So stay tuned and check it out. I've got some awesome tips that you won't want to miss, so I'll show you that now. As you can see here, I breed cories in a fairly active community tank. I don't set up a tank specifically designed to breed cories. Cories are excellent community fish, so I like to breed them in community settings. I know that most of the cories you run into, they're either going to want to lay their eggs on glass or what we call mop spawners, meaning they lay their eggs in mops or plants or moss. And when I say mops, I'm referring to a homemade mop that I use acrylic yarn and a cork. There's tons of videos on the internet where you can see how to make those. I also keep a breeder box on the back of this aquarium where I'm currently growing out a batch of Corydoras that I hatched out just a few weeks ago. Now, cories are also going to want to lay their eggs in some flow. That brings me to my first tip, and that's spawning mop placement. You're going to want to place your mop in some flow to encourage your cories to lay eggs in the mop, because recovering eggs from the mop is so much easier. Now, I found nearly all the panda cories in my mop the night before, as you can see here, so that's why I checked for eggs the next day. You're going to want to look for similar behavior to know when to look for eggs. Now, this brings me to my second tip, which is remove the spawning mop from the tank to check for eggs. You're going to want to just kind of look at it from the outside, see if you can see any eggs, but the eggs really normally are going to be buried pretty deep inside the spawning mop. So I start by removing the eggs from the mop. I don't hatch the eggs off the mop, and I'll go over why I do that later in the video, but I move the eggs to a glass jar filled with tank water from this aquarium. Now, I find that the eggs are pretty firm, so you don't have to worry too much about being too gentle, and they're also pretty sticky. This brings me to my third tip, and that's going to be stick the eggs around the jar or container that you're using so the eggs don't touch each other. These are the items that I use to hatch the eggs. You see the mason jar with tank water. I use methylene blue to prevent fungus. I use 1 drop per 2 cups of water, or 2 drops per liter basically. And I find that it usually takes about 3 to 4 days for the eggs to hatch. On day 4, all the eggs that I thought were gonna hatch had hatched, and at this time I do a water change, removing all of the detritus, unspent eggs, and any bad eggs. And then I try to return any of the fry that I accidentally sucked up on that water change. Now, my next tip is to start hatching baby brine shrimp on the day that your cories hatch, because by the time your baby brine hatch, usually the cories have used up their egg sacs and are ready to eat. Now, I refill my jar of cory fry back up with tank water, and you can see that the water here is still a little bit blue. There's still a little bit of that medicine, and at this point I add java moss. Now, the java moss is going to do 2 things. The java moss is going to start growing small live foods, infusoria, which is a great transition food from yolk sac to live food. But the java moss also, in my opinion, consumes the medicine. So what I've done is an experiment where I took a glass mason jar, filled it with tank water. It holds half the amount of water, so I add 1 drop of medicine. You can see it's about as blue as my water was when it started. I add a small swath of java moss and I put it on a time lapse. I did a 6-hour time lapse here, and you can see on the left side just how much color change that the water does. Now, in my experience, I've not had good luck hatching eggs off of Java moss. Now, I believe that this is one of the reasons why, and it's also one of the reasons why I recommend quarantining your fish in a bare bottom tank, hatching your eggs in a bare container. My last tip is to feed live foods such as microworms or baby brine shrimp if you're raising the fry in small containers, because live foods, they can survive in fresh water for several hours. You don't run the risk of fouling the water like you would if you were using prepared food, and then change water often. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please hit that like button. Leave me a comment if you have questions or just want to say what's up. That's always welcome. Thanks again, and I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks. Bye.